Hello and welcome to the ACCA Quality Assured Verifier program. This session reviews the QI job process for the Residential Service Installation program and the role played by the important third-party verifier. This session will review the participants in the program, a deeper understanding of the process, sampling protocols, and some of the expectations for those who serve as verifiers. As we saw from the previous session, the development of this program is based on the methodical, systematic journey to provide quality HVAC system installations in existing homes. Also from the previous session, the Verifier program accompanies RSI. It identifies the companies and their employees who can verify that the elements of the installation comply with the QI standard, those minimum requirements for design, equipment, distribution, and documentation. This flowchart lays out very simply the expectation of each participant in the program. The flowchart is divided into swim lanes so that the responsibility of each participant is clearly defined. As we walk through this process, please remember that the program seeks to provide a balance between rigor and being too oppressive, being reasonable, and having extreme requirements. So as we go through this, we'll discuss each requirement's relevance. This is not to be an eye exam, so we'll start in the upper left-hand corner. The first thing that must happen is for the RSI contractor to sell and install the HVAC system to the ACCA 5 QI standard. Contractors then register the job with the QA program. They may register the job at any time, so depending on the RSI contractor's prowess, their comfort level with their installer's capabilities, or the condition of the house, they may register the job immediately after it's sold. Next, they'll choose a verifier. As with many types of free market transactions, the initial vetting and final selection of the verifier, or verifiers, may take some time. Eventually, as relationships form, this process is expected to settle into a familiar routine. We just sold a job, register it with the QA program, and call the verifier. Next, let's presume the QI job has been installed. Therefore, the job's documentation is to be sent to the verifier. As we saw in the last session, there is some documentation that must be forwarded to the verifier. The items required for submission are detailed in Section 1 of the Verifier Checklist. Looking back at the whole flowchart to reestablish where we are in the process, let's review some of those dotted line connections. The first dotted line connection is from the RSI contractor to the QA program when the job is registered. A copy of the registration form will be part of the information submitted with the QI job documentation. The other dotted line represents the link between the RSI contractor, the verifier, and the QA program, because verifiers will be listed on the directory hosted by the QA program administrator. So, revisiting the initial steps of the program, after the job is finished, registered, the verifier is coordinated, and the documentation has been forwarded, we will then look at the verification process. This slide is a bit chopped up in an attempt to display the lanes of responsibility, but we'll pick up where we left off. The documentation has been submitted to the verifier. If the job is selected for an in-field evaluation, then the first Verifier Checklist, the installation file review, will be completed. Then the verifier will coordinate with the contractor and the customer to conduct the in-field evaluation. And then the second Verifier Checklist, the in-field evaluation, will be completed. This part of the process is not required to flow only in this way. It is possible that the RSI contractor will coordinate to have the verifier on site as the job is being finished. At that time, certain measurements and observations can be documented and incorporated into the final report. As the relationship between the RSI contractor and the verifier develops, it is anticipated that this process will smooth out into an almost seamless event. The other path, when competence has been demonstrated, is for only the installation file review to be performed. Regardless of the path that is followed, at the end, the QI job either met the minimum requirements and the path continues to the right, or there were elements that required remediation and the path leads to the left. As a reminder from the previous session, initially 3 consecutive jobs must meet the minimum requirements of an in-field evaluation. Then, 1 in 10 jobs will receive this level of evaluation. And every QI job installation file will be reviewed by a verifier. So if there are elements that require remediation, the verifier simply informs the RSI contractor so they can be corrected. And when the corrections have been effected, the documentation is resubmitted, or for jobs that require an in-field evaluation, an additional site visit is coordinated. The goal of the program is simply to promote quality HVAC installations. The program also seeks to treat people as adults. So if there's something that needs to be fixed, let's get it fixed, and then confirm that it was fixed. The next part of the flowchart looks at what happens when things go well and what happens when they don't. If the contractor cannot or will not correct the deficiencies, then the QA program will take the appropriate action. This process is really very similar to the action taken when a verifier has a similar episode of noncompliance, and it will be covered in more detail during the next session. However, as you can see by the swim lanes, the responsibility of the verifier is simply to report their findings. They do not need to take ownership of the problem. Simply report it to the RSI program. In addition to any corrective action that may be taken, the RSI contractor that must leave a registered QI job unfinished or with remaining elements requiring remediation, they must also revert to the higher level of oversight until competence can be reestablished. So 3 consecutive registered QI jobs must be completed before the sampling protocol is reinstated. Since this process is the one that will be followed much more often, we'll talk a bit more about when things go right. After the job checks out, the verifier submits the necessary documentation electronically to the QA program. This process will evolve and change. As it does, further instruction will be provided. Then the QA program administrator will review the submitted documentation and, when appropriate, issue the appropriate form of recognition to the RSI contractor, or, at the contractor's discretion, to the customer. It is also anticipated that a directory of QI jobs or some form of recognition will also be provided for RSI contractors who display a high level of quality work. That was a whirlwind tour of the QI job process when using a verifier. It was acknowledged that this program will require some time to populate the country with a cadre of tested or NATE certified verifiers. Therefore, in the interim, a company may use an employee, a manager or a member of another installation team, who is not involved in the design or installation of the HVAC system and who has passed the same test or achieved the same NATE credential. For companies that employ an evaluator, there's a slightly different process. For companies that use their evaluator to perform the in-field evaluation, a slightly different flowchart is used. It picks up right after the RSI contractor registers the job. Instead of calling the verifier, the RSI contractor will dispatch their evaluator to conduct the in-field evaluation. Until there are verifiers available to offer an objective third-party evaluation, the RSI contractor must use their company evaluator for every registered QI job. The in-field evaluation checklist is then forwarded with the other documentation to the verifier for the installation file review. As with the previous flowchart, the RSI contractor will have the opportunity to resolve any discrepancies with the installation. Please visit www.acca.org/QA for a free PDF download of the RSI contractor and verifier documents. There, more detail is provided for review at your convenience. Some additional requirements for the RSI contractor is that in order to participate in the program, QI jobs must be performed. They must be completed during their year of recognition, and since that date may be abbreviated due to participation in other programs, the first year requirement is only for 2 jobs. Every year of accreditation after that must have 5 registered QI jobs, or the person will be delisted for a 6-month period. The purpose of the program is to effect quality HVAC installations. So if you see something that is out of compliance, let the RSI contractor who volunteered to serve in this program know what's going on. A lot of hard work went into making the evaluation of HVAC systems as objective as possible. All we ask is for a technically competent person to effect the evaluations. The verifier is expected to observe, measure, and report. There's no need to take responsibility for the job, only for reporting what's been found. This is applicable to evaluators too. You are expected to represent your company and this program to the customer, offering an unbiased opinion of the work that was done. This has been a review of the participants, the process for verifying an HVAC system installation, the sampling protocol, and the expectations of the verifier and evaluator. If you have any questions about what you saw or heard here today, please feel free to contact us. You can call, write, or visit our website for more information. Thank you.